This video was presented on February the 1st, 2021. It was presented to let our members and the HVACR community know what the association was doing on their behalf. We've been unable to have our regular chapter meetings, so it was important to bring everyone up to date. It's about 28 minutes of announcements and activities. I think you'll see how important the association is to the industry and to your business.
First off, as we were saying there, we've not been having chapter meetings, and the reason for that is because the Arkansas Department of Health has us limited to a maximum of 10 attendees, including the speaker and everything. So, I mean, our numbers would just be so limited. It doesn't make any sense to have a meeting, especially when you've got a certain number of people who are concerned. Now, I know that a lot of our guys, for lack of a better term, we're tough and we're not all that worried about it. But we've also known that a lot of us who are so-called tough have had lost relatives and friends during this COVID thing. But the main reason we're not been having them is because of the Arkansas Department of Health and their regulations on what you're supposed to do. We can go for a bigger meeting, but I'm going to be as honest with you as I know how. We can get special permission to have a meeting with larger than 10 with that special permission. And quite frankly, I don't want to bring that much attention to us during this time period as though we're not complying or trying to comply with all of the restrictions. One thing that's coming up right now that we've been working on, y'all may remember Representative Lynch, who for the last couple of legislative sessions has tried to help us with the continuing education bill. What has happened, if you may recall a year ago or 2 years ago, at least two of the folks in the public health committee said that they didn't want to see any kind of continuing education as a legislative mandate and wanted us to do it via regulation. So we went back to the Department of Health where our program is still located, and they were in the process of reorganization and moving our program over to the Department of Labor and Licensing. Once we got there, then the Department of Labor and License read our law, and evidently it does not allow for regulation to institute continuing education. So this year we're going back to the legislature and saying we want permissive legislation that will allow us to be able to have regulation for continuing education. Now, once that happens, if it does, it's got to go back to the Department Labor and Licensing to our HVACR licensing program, and they would have to approve some form of continuing education that would have to go out to the industry for several times around the state for hearings. And then it would have to go to a legislative group who would look at it to make sure that we weren't going too far with it. So if this passes, it only gives us permission to start the process. As you recall, a couple of years ago, we were only asking for 4 hours per year in order to maintain your A, B, C, D, or E license. And 2 of that had to come from code, and the other 2 could also come from code, but could also come from training that you would get for your distributors. I would hope that we would continue to look at that, but we've got to first get permission. We know we're not going to get it through the legislature right now as a legislative mandate to implement continuing ed. So we're going the route of getting permission to regulate it, which again, there's all those hoops. So, gee, that is a long explanation. I never realized we've been doing so much work in the background to even get it to this point. The next thing we are doing and have planned is classes. We have classes planned for this spring and next fall. This spring will be another round of Manual J. We took off a year, didn't do any Manual J training because we felt like we had kind of exhausted that market since we had done, my goodness, we've done about 16 classes the year before, got about 150 people, but we've been getting some calls for that. This is also something that the Arkansas Department of Energy has a lot of interest in. And so anyway, in fact, they're partnering with us to be able to do it again. We have 3 classes scheduled now. February 25th, 26th at R&E in Little Rock. March 11th and 12th at Ed Supply in Jonesboro. And then we have March 25th and 26th at East Arkansas Community College. That's a little tentative. We got to get one final bit of approval in order to be able to do that. But again, all of these are going to be limited to 9 people plus myself. So our limit is 10 people in the class. If the demand is great enough, we will have multiple classes. So I guess what I'm saying is that we're going to roll it all out. We do have, though, more than just those classes. Now, I'll tell you about that in just a second. The cost of the class, just like 2 years ago, is $350. That includes a $300 one-year subscription to WriteSoft. If you've already got a current subscription to WriteSoft, it's only going to cost you $50. You're going to consume that many materials in the class. So the class basically is virtually free, except for the fact that you do need to have the WriteSoft subscription. And by the way, if you don't have the subscription, don't just call WriteSoft and say you want Manual J, because that's what they're going to sell you. We've made a special deal with WriteSoft, and we get WriteSoft plus Manual, not WriteSoft as a total package. We get Manual J plus Manual D, and another little item or two that's part of a package that we negotiated because of a long-term relationship that we have with WriteSoft that dates back probably over 20 years. So please run your WriteSoft subscription through the association. We make zero off of it. So we're not saying that so that we can get the cream of the crop. We will have strict adherence to COVID-19 protocols. God, we got 7 pages worth of stuff that we'll send you on what we're doing. It's not a big deal. You're used to it, but it's there to try to, in case the Department of Health ever looks at what are those guys doing, they'll be able to see that we're in strict adherence to what they want you to do when you're having a small group coming together. We have not just those 3 classes scheduled. Let me see. I want to show you. Yes, here's the 9 classes that we're going to be having. One in Little Rock, which is R&E. We've already had one in Little Rock with Ed Supply. And then down in the Camden El Dorado area, that's not scheduled yet, but we'll have one. Then in Fort Smith, again, not scheduled yet, but it'll be there. Forest City, we mentioned that at East Arkansas Community College. Harrison, Mountain Home, not sure if it'll be in Harrison or in Mountain Home, but it'll be in that neighborhood in the North Central chapter. Hot Springs in Jonesboro, again, at Ed Supply there. We also have permission to have one over at Craighead Electric if the demand is great enough in Jonesboro. And then Springdale, which is, of course, the Fayetteville, Springdale. My goodness, such a huge area up there. And then lastly, in Texarkana. Here's the thing. It'll take me another week or 2 to get the dates confirmed, because this year, to get permission for our venues, they have to go through more than one person. Usually I can call somebody and they can say, yeah, you can meet here. But they kind of have to go through their chain of command to make sure, because of the COVID thing, that it's okay. They'll look at our adherence to Arkansas Department of Health protocols, see that we're being serious about it, and then get permission. So give me a couple of weeks. However, if you would be so kind, if you're interested in a Manual J, please email me and tell me where you might be wanting to attend. And that way you go ahead and get your name in line, because it's going to be first come, first serve. Once you get your name in the hat, I'll then get back with you and you can work out the payment and getting the WriteSoft downloaded if you still need it. But wanted to go ahead and let you know that those are the locations, 9 different locations across the state. And you may know we've only got eight chapters in the state, but years ago we had a really good chapter at Forest City. We're trying to kind of renew that, bring it back, and that's why we love working with East Arkansas Community College, because they're extremely supportive and have offered their facilities for us 2 years ago, and then again for this year. Let me see. Let's get this, go to the next slide. There we go. Next fall, we'll have 2 more sets of classes, one in each of the 8 locations that we have chapters. ACA quality installs. If you're interested in knowing what that is, you'll get more information from us over the summer. But ACA quality installs is something that it looks like it is going to be a prerequisite to planned rebates that will be coming from the federal government, not rebates, but tax credits. It looks like that's in the meal, and it looks like the language is being written to where you have to be a certified ACA quality installs person. And the idea behind that is that, the data is that, and I'm going to use a rough number, about 20 or 20+% of the efficiency and efficacy of a piece of equipment is never achieved because our industry has had the idea of just kind of slapping stuff in instead of checking what is the capacity, what is the efficacy of the system, using not only the charge, but also the airflow. So that looks like it's going to be a very important class. Even if those tax credits do not come about, it may very well be that you would be able to position yourself as that professional company that does this and is able to hand them the data showing that your equipment is operating at maximum efficiency. It's going to cost a couple of $100 for one student. A second student, which is a good idea, is going to be 150. Surely by next fall, we won't have a 9-person limit. We're going to, keep our fingers crossed. And then in addition, we're going to have a duct blaster blower door class. And the big reason for that is, Little Rock and some other cities, Little Rock has instituted, Fayetteville, and some other cities are looking at instituting a requirement for duct blaster on all new construction. It looks like that will be a part of the new energy code, which will be the 2018 energy code, which will be taking effect in January 2022. But the testing looks like, this is just conversation, looks like it won't actually take effect until 2023. Everything's in negotiation between all the interested parties, and therefore we don't know any more than that. But anyway, that's what's coming up for the fall session. So we're going to have a super, super busy fall. The association providing all kinds of classes for you if you're interested in attending them. We'll also mention that for next spring, and this isn't a done deal yet, we're trying to have some business classes that are going to be primarily aimed at the company who, small company, anywhere from 3 to maybe 10 employees, where, you as an owner have been wearing a tool belt for years and years, and all of a sudden you kind of got to let that go because you got a business that's too demanding for you to be able to go out and do repairs, but you're not exactly real comfortable with what your margins and your markup and all that stuff ought to be. So I'm hoping that'll take place in the spring. The duct blaster class, I didn't mention the cost for it. It's only going to be $150, $200 if you want an optional field test. And going back to that, I might mention this will not be competition to something like ResNet or to VPI. In those particular classes, you would go much deeper into what I would call a weatherization world and energy efficiency management on designing new construction. Our goal initially is to make sure that you have the skills to do what's required by code to do a duct blaster test, and if you want to expand into also do a blower door test. Again, that won't take effect until 2023, we think, but we want to go ahead and start planning the classes, because if that kicks in 2023, the demand for duct blaster and blower door testing is going to be huge overnight, and we'd like for you to be prepared to do that. One of the other things that we're doing is the second Monday of every month, we have a code update with Tony Woodard. He is our state inspector, chief inspector, and the Department of Labor and Licensing is allowing us to have these meetings every Monday via a webinar. And he picks a topic based on what they're seeing in the field. The first month we had it was in November, and the electrical program was very concerned about that we didn't run our refrigerant lines in what would be considered the Electricians Workspace. So, Looks pretty simple, except for the fact that you've had to trip over refrigerant lines for many years as you would get back to the disconnect. Well, that has never been acceptable. We didn't know it, but now we do, and that's why that first session was so important. In December, this came about because uh, some contractors didn't realize that they needed to provide access. And of course, that was particularly important when you were looking at a unit in the attic and you had a scuttle hole. I love that picture. I laugh every time I look at it. Mr. Inspector, I left the rope for you. Well, better than a rope, you've got to be there or you've got to leave a ladder because inspectors do not carry their own ladders. They're just not equipped to be able to get into an attic like that. There's a pull down staircase, it's okay. But if there's not one, you have to make arrangements for the inspector to be able to get up into the attic. So that was something, again, we didn't know. And according to Tony, there were guys said, hey, why do we have to do that? We researched. Tony brought the code that's required. So now you know if you're going to have a unit in the attic and it's just got a scuttle hole, you're going to have to put in your price the fact that you've got to be there to help the inspector. Now you'll do a coordination with the inspector, so it's not that inconvenient. But anyway, that was our December, and we also included some things like what were the requirements for the full length that you could have from the access to the furnace, the width of the walkway over there, the working area. And then in January, we talked about that you've got to have a listing on your insulation on the refrigerant lines. And, I don't know, maybe y'all knew that. I didn't know that. So it's got to be printed on there. And, the sad thing about it is if it's not printed on there and you have an inspector that's concerned about making sure it has the correct R factor, you can wind up having to redo it. So that was a good one. Because, forewarned is forearmed. And now we know. Next month, which is next Monday, I bet you can tell what this one's going to be about. Venting. Not just putting a PVC pipe up inside a metal vent, but the whole package of what kind of venting they are seeing taking place in the field. Don't you love that picture? Crazy. So they see a lot of crazy stuff, and I know you do too. But, most of the people that are tuning in right now on the code issues, you know them. Hopefully, you'll be able to be reinforcing your own guys, and then also be able to see what's happening. And hopefully, some people who don't know will tune in and start doing right too. Our news magazine, published 5 times a year. This was the January issue. And anytime you want to see an issue of the news magazine, you go to our website, arhvacr.org. And about a third of the way down the page, on the left-hand side, you'll see a picture of the recent issue. And at the top of the page, you'll see a little in the menu, it'll say news magazines. That will take you to all the back issues of the news magazine. Our next one will be out in March. So, by the way, if you have areas of interest, if you want to make a contribution, if you want to vent and blow off steam, write an article, we will attribute it to you. The other issue is that we continue to work with EMC Insurance. EMC Insurance is a huge portion to keep us financially viable. We receive a marketing fee from them, therefore we market for them. I understand their insurance rates are very competitive to begin with, and then on top of that, as a member, you receive a 10% discount. Here's what we need. I'm not going to ask you to buy from EMC, but I'm going to ask you to please give them a chance. If their prices happen to be higher, hey, you got to go with what's good for your company. But you might find that you can save money, plus get the 10% discount. And that is a huge benefit to the association because it shows them that we as an association are promoting their product. So obviously, I'm in a selling mode, right? If you do not use them, at least give them an opportunity. And then, if it doesn't work out for you, it doesn't work out for you. Our website, I think, has the most comprehensive source of information for Arkansas contractors. It's very thorough. If you want to know anything about the law is there. If you want to know about the regulations are there. If you want to know who is on that board, that's there, which, by the way, we've got to update now because we just gained, I think it was 2 or 3 new board members as others rotated off. But anyway, that's there. If you want to know about testing for a license, that information is there. So there's all kinds of good stuff. So that's the site. And I think that if you'll peruse around it, you'll see that we're doing the best we can to keep you informed. Membership, every year we send out notices. It's membership renewal time. Basically, the main renewal is $200. That gives $100 to the state to operate, $100 for your local chapter. And you say, well, why do they need it when we're not having meetings? Well, because several of them were in the red and the state was having to send money to them to do it. We were also having to get sponsors and distributors to help sponsor them. And that's okay because it's all working out, but we need your membership. We need your membership so when we go to the legislature, we've got greater authority because we've got more members, and we need your membership because it takes money to fund the association. When it all boils down to it, the question early on when we were working with the governor's office to try to determine is the HVAC industry an essential trade, and we were lending our support to ACA, who was working on a national level to make sure that we were noted as an essential trade. And it's always been curious to me, why were plumbers initially mentioned? Why were electricians initially mentioned? And we were left out. I don't know. I guess people think of the trades being plumbers and electricians and never think about HVAC guys. But fortunately, because of what ACA did and what we were doing in supporting them here on the state level, our industry was listed as an essential trade, which changed our world because we were so close to coming into a lockdown. If you remember, Governor Hutchinson was under tremendous pressure about last of March, 1st of April last year, wanting us to go into a lockdown like they had in California and New York, and he kept resisting that. Had he given in and we not been listed as an essential trade, you would have shut your doors. And so thank goodness for ACA, thank goodness for what our association is doing to make sure that you were listed as an essential trade. But I always say to the public, essential trade, no heat, no air, no refrigeration. Yeah, we're pretty essential. At this juncture, we've been going on for like 24 minutes. If you got any questions, if you do, make sure that you unmute your audio and pop up. I'm seeing one person with their audio unmuted, and doesn't seem to have any questions. Dan, you got anything you want to add?
I think you've covered it, Tom. As usual, you're number one.
Dan is the president of the Central Chapter here in Little Rock, and we appreciate what he has done, and we appreciate what the distributors have done to build our membership here and the support that we get from Kirk. I see you're here, Kirk Pierce over at Centerpoint Energy. They all have been a big, big help to make the association grow and be successful over these last couple of years. Also, see Tim Quetch is here. Never pronounced his last name correct. I'm sorry, Tim. Tim is the engineer over at the Energy Office who is facilitating the conversations and moving us forward toward adopting a new energy code. The man works extremely, extremely hard and has the job of herding cats. So if he can herd cats, he's pretty good fellow. If you don't have any questions, we're going to take about 30 seconds here to give somebody a time to figure out how to turn off or turn on their microphone. And we're open to where anybody can jump in.
Hey, Thomas, Kirk, real quick. Just want to thank you and the association for the work you guys do and being an advocate for that industry and all your support and helping everyone in the HVAC back industry. So appreciate the work you're doing as well, both you guys, you and Dan both.
So Kirk and CenterPoint Energy, as well as AOG up in Fayetteville area, have some really good rebate programs that if you're installing gas furnaces, consider that high efficiency equipment and look at whether or not that rebate can help your customer, offset a significant portion of the difference between, say, a 80% furnace and a 90 or 95 plus furnace. Certainly worth looking at. By the way, along that line, Kirk, and for everybody, all you guys, my crystal ball says high efficiency equipment and indoor air quality is where you need to make sure you are an expert over the next 4 years. And I mean an expert meaning that it's legitimate knowledge of product that you are making available to your customers, because it is, as you well know, it is high on everybody's mind these days. And that's not only residential, it's also commercial. I've heard of some people who are just burning the barn down with commercial installs on indoor air quality. So consider that as part. If you don't know anything about it, there's a lot of places you can learn, and we'll try to make that information available too as we go into the summertime. Having said that, I very much appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in. We are working. I realize that you may wonder whether or not we're doing anything since our chapter meetings have been postponed or suspended. I don't see us being able to start meeting again until October in fall, because I don't see the number of people that can be involved in a meeting without special permission increasing from 10 over the next 2 or 3 months. So I miss you. I miss those meetings. It's so good, the camaraderie of meeting everybody, seeing everybody. But that will resume in the fall. And between now and then, we'll look at maybe having some programs other than me talking. I just wanted to let what we're doing as an association on the behalf of the industry and our members. Having said that, thanks a bunch. I appreciate you like you can't believe. Together, we really are going to make a big difference in the quality of install and the comfort and safety for folks. Have a good one, sir.
See you next Monday.
Good. Bye now.
Thanks, guys. See y'all.